As you may have gathered from what we've already talked about, a contact record is simply a list of information about a person with whom we want to build a relationship. So it includes their name, their address, their telephone number. And what we're going to do is we're just going to create a contact record. Let's say that Chris Huffman has just been to lunch and he's been introduced to a person and he has their business card. And now he's going to put that information into his database. Now all he needs to do, I'm going to press Insert on the keyboard, and as you can see, it blanks out all the fields. Well, that doesn't mean that I wiped out Chris's record. What it means is that I've got a blank contact record. If you'll notice now, it says 1 of 133 instead of 132, which it said before. Now, let's say that the company that he met with was Brown Enterprises, and that the person that he met with, his name was Jim Brown. So I'm going to type Brown Enterprises, and then I'm going to press Enter. Now, notice that I pressed Enter, and it moved me down just one field. That's a preference that we can set. Later on we'll take a look at preferences, and I'll show you where you can change that if you wanted that to be Tab instead of Enter. Right now, Tab will move me to the next most used field. So, contact is Jim Brown. Now notice that I'm not putting in a first name and a last name for Jim Brown. I'm simply typing Jim Brown. ACT is smart enough to know that Jim must be the first name and Brown must be the last name. But you might be ahead of me. You might be thinking, yeah, but what if it was Dr. Jim Brown? Then would Doctor be his first name? Certainly not, and we need to make exceptions for that. And there's a place to do that as well. Now, his title is whatever he does for the company. In other words, maybe he's the owner of the company, maybe he's the president. And we could use a drop-down. Notice that I've got a drop-down arrow, and I could use a drop-down and see what I've got listed here. As a matter of fact, we can even edit the list of drop-downs, which we'll take a look at a little bit later on as well. But we could also just start typing. If he's the president, I should be able to type P-R-E, and there's president, and press Enter. And notice now that I'm going to put in his phone number. Now, his phone number is on his card, and his phone number may be the same as others in his organization, or he could have his own number, his own extension. So it's whatever is on his card, and I don't have to type the dashes. So let's say it was 800-555-1212. I didn't type any dashes. Okay, and then I can press Enter and move to mobile phone, or I could have pressed Tab there and moved to extension. Depends on how you have your system set up. I'm going to type 254 for his extension, and then press Enter to move to mobile phone, and I could put in his mobile phone. We could continue on with entering the information for this contact. And as you can see, I'm just going to press Enter. We can go through and put in the address, put in the zip code, website, email, all the different information for the contact. Now, this isn't the only way to get contacts into the database. It is possible to transfer information from other databases, and later on we'll talk about that. Right now we're just kind of looking at the anatomy of a contact, so to speak. And the contact record is just a piece of the database. Now, we've only looked at one layout tab. Now, we don't have any history with Jim yet, except just to create the account, but we could click on History, and actually later on I'll show you how we can create history. If, say for example, before we even had a chance to do anything else with Jim, maybe we ran into him in the mall. So we didn't have an appointment scheduled, so what we need to do is create history. I'll show you how to do that later on. What about activities? Well, we don't have any activities listed yet. Later on we'll talk about how when we create the activities they just automatically show up. We don't have to put those in there. So what else might we want to put for Jim Brown? Well, maybe he's got an assistant. So for a secondary contact, what I want to do is click on New Secondary Contact, and then I want to add in his assistant. Now, the company is Brown Enterprises, and the secondary contact is whatever his assistant's name is. Okay, so let's say his assistant's name is Sally Sue, okay, and her title is Assistant. Matter of fact, I just typed AS and it filled it in. And we don't necessarily have to put the phone in unless she has a different phone or a different extension than Jim. So if I just press Enter, now I know that when I call to talk to Jim, probably any female voice that answers there's going to be a good chance that that's Sally Sue. Now, Sally Sue is not somebody that I'm necessarily going to send information to directly, but it'll be great to get to know her as well, and it'll be easy for me to remember who she is, what her name is. So we've got a tremendous amount of information within a contact record, and it's easy to create these contact records. And so the main thing that I wanted you to get out of this particular section is just how easy it is to manage ACT. Instead of having things just down on sticky notes, you meet somebody, you got your business card, and then end up losing that information, you can quickly get that information into the system. Once we get the information into the system, then we can quickly work through it, browsing through records or doing lookups. We'll take a look at browsing next.